I went out this morning. It was very cool, and she wasn't out. There are two neighbor dogs next door, though, that are new. Maybe they bark at each other.
Maybe. I'll find out. I haven't heard otherwise, so it may just be...
Bad timing on my part, too. Ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready? Good. Good evening. I'd like to bring the meeting to order and ask that roll be called, please.
Feldman.
Here.
Holzhauser. Here. Humble.
Here.
Smith. Here. Tyra.
Here.
Wagenbach. Wisdom.
Thank you. I'd like to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The board will now move on to public participation portion of the meeting. We always begin the public participation portion with the superintendent's report. Dr. Dearman.
There we go. Good evening. First day of school, we're back. So thank you to those that are here this evening. I know it's been a long, actually 3 days now getting this going. So just a few quick items. First one, current enrollment. As of today, we have 4,720 students enrolled in the Dunlap School District K-12. We are full in third grade classes at Banner, as well as nearly full at kindergarten and fifth grade. And kindergarten at Hickory Grove is full as well. So good problem to have, but we are full, but not over full at this point. Just to put it in perspective, we work with a company called Decision Insight, and they do projections on our enrollments. And they had a conservative enrollment at 4,722 and a moderate at 4,776. However, with the implementation of our Clear Batch program, which verifies residencies, so that those that actually are attending our school are proven to live in the district, which is a requirement by the state of Illinois, we have found 41 students this year that have been unenrolled, and that's the work of Mrs. Ellis and Mrs. Bowald to get that done, amongst others, of course, but those two are in charge, so thank you, ladies, for doing that. So if you take those numbers out or put them back in, either way, those estimates are spot on of where we're at. So that is good news that the data we're getting is reliable as we hoped it would be. During our opening institute, we had a presentation by Mr. Matt Toman. He presented for the staff in the morning, and then that evening did a presentation for our parents, our students, our athletes, our coaches, and community in general. So thank him for doing that. And then this morning, a good start to the school district. District office staff has traditionally we disperse throughout all the buildings so that we have extra hands on deck to help with that first day. My spot was Wilder Waite this morning. We had a few criers. That's the parents, not the students, for the kindergarten drop-off. But overall, it went well, and a special day for me today because this was my last first day for my child, my daughter, who's a senior. So I did get her picture by the front door, which she was very happy to give me. Not really, but she did it anyway. Last two items, FOIA requests. The outstanding FOIA requests from last month have been completed by Mr. McKenzie, and then we had one additional. He has also completed that. And then the last item I wanted to talk about was, it was brought to my attention a couple of weeks ago by an alum named Jim Kent about a mural that had been painted over or signed over, however you want to look at that. And some alumni brought that to my attention. I've been in communication with Mr. Kent. He gave me a 4-step proposal of how to resolve it. I looked at it. I agree with it. We're going to do it. I just asked that he give me a little bit of time because the priority right now is getting kids in school and getting them started. Once we got that done, then we'd be addressing it ASAP. Dr. Adrian is aware of it. He will be coordinating that effort. So, all apologies. It wasn't done maliciously. Everybody makes mistakes. We will get it resolved. It is in the process of being resolved, and we will take care of it as we said we would. That is all I have, Dr. Humbles. Thank you.
Dr. Dearman, did you want to make a comment about the status of where the strategic plan is?
We got the graphic finalized, so that is ready. So that needs to be printed, and then the next step is the coordination of trying to attain all the goals and the steps to get there. And I am coordinating with Ed Leadership Solutions, gathering more data that I'll be bringing next month for board approval at that time.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Dearman. At this time, we will move on to public comments. Is there anyone here that wishes to address the board? If so, please raise your hand. Thank you. Before addressing the board, I have to read this set of procedures that we follow. Before addressing the board, I would like to remind you of our process. Per Board Policy 2:230, we ask that when addressing the board, please identify yourself and be brief. Comments shall be limited to 5 minutes. The speaker is asked to please conduct oneself with respect and civility towards others. Individuals less than 18 years of age are permitted to address the board if accompanied by his or her parent or guardian. The board typically does not engage in two-way conversations during the public portion of the meeting. Any follow-up response that might be necessary will be addressed by the administration at a later date. To be respectful of others and protect confidentiality, complaints against individual students, staff members, or board members, either named or unnamed, shall not be orally presented to the Board of Education. Such complaints should be put in writing, signed by the person or persons making the charges, and delivered to the Board of Education Secretary. At this time, I would like to ask anyone who wishes to address the board to please come forward and sign the public participation sheet. Then each speaker may come to the podium and begin by speaking into the microphone, stating their name and the topic they will be addressing. Thank you very much for letting me read that. You can use the podium and the microphone if you like. Oh, there's a paper up there, ma'am. It's okay.
She was just going to talk to you.
She was.
Gavin, you might need to tilt that mic down.
I was sizing her up.
First of all, public speaking is not my forte, okay? And I don't like my voice either on the mic, so. But my name is Carol Boyer. I'm in company of Karen Ruth and Kevin Carter, which I think probably most of you are familiar with these people, and also some friends from my class of '69. All of us represent the DHS alumni, and as the doctor has said, we are disappointed in a mistake and are glad to hear it's in the works to be fixed. Many of you in the administration have been contacted by our classmate, Jim Kent, and he's from St. Louis. He's done a lot of historical background on this situation. Graduated more than 50 years ago, right, girls? And we had 59 students in our class at that time. So to hear all these numbers is just amazing. My father is Ray Chalicombe. He was one of the school board members in 1969. Same year I graduated, but I think I had my mind on other things than whatever he was doing. But that board consolidated the boundaries of this district in 1969. So you people on the board today will someday be in history for whatever is happening now that, you know, the future might look back on. And I think that's where I'm coming from, is a communication, a possible communication gap maybe between what's current and what has happened in the past. My brother did do the art that has disappeared. There's no communication about why or when even, or how we're moving forward until Doctor mentioned it just a little bit ago, which is wonderful news. Anyway, I think what hits me is I was with Dan when he saw, you'll have to excuse me, when he saw the wall and his art was gone. And I think without any communication of explanation to him, it would be helpful if those who know why or when and can explain what's on the wall now in its place could somehow give some enlightenment as to what has happened. It's taken a lot of wind out of his sails. He now has moved. He lived in Dunlap for his lifetime. We all grew up here. We are fourth generations of DHS grads, and he is now in Goodfield. He's very busy and continues in art and theater. The shirt I'm wearing is a result of people. He works in the Goodfield Theater in the barn. People have approached him and suggested different things. And this is one of the suggestions, which was created and came to be in May, before our alumni banquet, which Doctor went to, and that was, his presentation was so awesome, just of how the district has developed and changed since 1969. But anyway, this is something that he has created. It is not a promotion. It's more of a memorable thing for those interested. It is possible, if you're interested, to see the order that you can get online. But his approach is, if there's any money to be made, that it will be going to the art and theater department at the high school. So I'll leave you with that, and thank you for your time. I know it's a busy time today and always, but I'll pass it off then to Kevin, who has some other articles to discuss. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, well done.
Good evening. My name's Kevin Carter. I am the president of the alumni for Dunlap High School. As you can see, there's a lot of emotion. And Dunlap, when I grew up, was this little town 6 blocks by 6 blocks, 550 people. There have been 4 and 5 generations go through Dunlap High School, and there's still a lot of connection to people that have not attended in this building that we see. So I know Dr. Dearman probably knows this, because every time I see him, I shove it down his throat on what year the first graduating class at Dunlap High School was. Anybody have a guess?
Out of this building?
No, first year of Dunlap graduating, the first year of their high school graduating.
Can I phone a friend?
Well, I will tell you, 1895.
Wow.
Yes, so it's been around quite a number of years. A few years ago, and I know it was not the people that are here now, and I did not know about it until afterwards, or there would have been something done about it, I guarantee you, that a bunch of trophies were thrown away. There were trophies from the 1920s and 30s that Dunlap had played and won. Those trophies were thrown away. I had heard later that they were wanting, whoever was in charge was wanting to get rid of the graduating pictures that you see up in the Commons area. And that was stopped, so that was good. So I think the thing that we're wanting as alumni would just like to be communicated to if something was going to change or something was going to be thrown away, because just like when Carol spoke, you see there's still a lot of emotion, and I hear a lot of it from people that have graduated since I'm on the Alumni Association. So that's all we're asking. Just like to have some communication. I realize Dunlap has grown so big. The school district's always been big, but all these subdivisions have filled it in, and that's why we have the amount of people that we have out here. So all we're asking is we'd just like to be contacted. We'll give you our numbers. You've got numbers, and that's all. So appreciate the time, and thank you very much.
Thank you. And typically, we do not involve ourselves in two-way communication, but I will say that Teresa Holzhauser and I are both alumni, and we were very concerned as well. I think sometimes when newer staff comes, it's not as apparent to them that Dunlap is a small knit community, and it goes back a long way. And so after this happened, we did develop a policy that in the future, anytime trophies, memorabilia, artwork are going to be disposed of or moved permanently, that the administration reach out to the Alumni Association, and they are given a certain timeline so that the alumni is allowed to contact people if anyone's interested in taking those items. So we have taken action. We do appreciate and understand why people were concerned. And I know Mr. Chalcombe. In fact, I think someone else on the board here knows him quite well. So we do appreciate you coming, and we have instituted a policy, so hopefully this won't happen again. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Dearman, how'd I do? I didn't use any bad words, did I?
Better than the banquet, better than the banquet.
Okay. This concludes the public participation portion of the meeting. The board will now move on to the information discussion items. The school activity account reports are included in the board packet. Is there any discussion? Next, Mr. McKenzie will present information regarding the 2024 fiscal year tentative budget. Mr. McKenzie, thank you for coming.
Not you. You have to be here.
Thank you for coming, Mr.
No,
McKenzie.
we're not thankful.
All right, tonight is the presentation of the tentative budget. I'm just going to make a few comments about it. A lot of you have the information. I've talked to a number of you before tonight's meeting. Tonight is the the first step of adopting a budget. Tomorrow we have to have our budget on display for 30 days, so I will have. So we'll get it on display tomorrow. It's already on the board agenda, so I'm sure a lot of people already saw it already. On September 20th, luckily our board meetings this month, or this year fit, so we don't have anything special. But on September 20th, we will have a public hearing at the beginning of the board meeting, giving people opportunities to speak if they would like. And then as far as the overall numbers, you'll see the numbers there, the 56 million in revenue and 59 million in expenses in the tentative budget. The big things that happened this year, evidence-based funding, we're going to see an increase of 530,000. I was originally expecting a more like 350, which is what we had last year. But this Dunlap, with all these other school districts getting so much personal property replacement tax over the last few years, a lot of these tiers have changed. So Dunlap is now a tier 1 school, which has been a tier 2 since the beginning of the new evidence-based funding. All that means is tier 1 schools get the majority of the increase every year. If you're like a tier 4 school, which some schools have moved to around here, they don't get any increase of their evidence-based funding. There's what used to be called general state aid. The other big thing that happened this summer is corporate personal property replacement tax. They're expecting a 28.8% decrease. I have it up even on my computer. I think I may have closed it now, but that personal property replacement tax goes back to like the mid-70s. There used to be a personal property tax of stuff in the state of Illinois. So if you were a business and you had big equipment and stuff, you were charged a personal property tax. After that kind of went away, whatever percentage you got of the total state personal property tax at that time, that's the percentage you still get of personal property replacement tax today. So Dunlap gets a fairly small percentage anyway, but last year we got $3 million of personal property replacement tax. As an example, Peoria got 40 million. Peoria Public Schools got 40 million last year, and that's just a function of how much industry and stuff they had in their district compared to Dunlap district in the mid-70s. But anyway, so part of that 28% is they're saying there was an overpayment of like 800 million last year, or in the last couple of years. So part of this decrease is really a representation that they overpaid us in previous years. There's several other examples just of some corporate tax limitations are expiring, so they're expecting corporate earnings next year to be less than they have been the last couple of years. It's also a function that corporate earnings are probably going to be less just because a lot of the federal stimulus stuff is expired now, so they're going to be less. So that's but that's a big number for us. I have built into the budget increase of 3% of EAV next year. We had a 4.25% increase last year, so I've checked with the county, but it's too early for them to really tell an estimate yet. So, and then employee salaries. You know, we've improved a lot of salaries. Payroll's been a problem for all school districts in Illinois. They probably are nationwide. I had a discussion with the local school business official group that we have this week about the fact that, I mean, Morton's doing a survey right now, what everybody's paying aides, because they're still paying, you know, $14 an hour or $13 an hour, I think, something like that. And they, of course, can't hire aides in Morton right now because, you know, minimum wage is $13 an hour. So we've had to bump those starting salaries and, you know, bump a lot of other salaries to stay competitive, and that's putting pressure on our budget this year. But hopefully, as the minimum wage increase stops next year, you know, at $15 an hour, we're already above that in every category of employee we have with starting salaries. So hopefully, we'll see some moderation of that increase over the next couple of years that we have seen the last 2 years. So this is the operating side of the budget. I always think of two different sides. I've explained this in the past, but I always think of two different sides of our budget. The operating budget is all the things that, all the funds that we pay our employees out of. Our education fund being the biggest. Everything has to be in the education fund unless there's a statutory reason to be in another fund. But this is where we run all of our, you know, busing and buildings and, you know, the education component of things. And so this is where we focus, you know, most of our activities here, and so this is the most controllable, if at all, because part of the budget. So everybody wants to know what I'm thinking that the bottom line is going to be immediately. And so I also like to remind everybody, you know, I do what I consider conservative budgeting. If I know a number, that's what I'm going to budget. So like evidence-based funding, I know that number. But other numbers, I have a tendency to think, okay, are we really going to get that? And so, you know, revenues might be a little under, you know, done, and expenses might be over, you know, because most expenses you know right now, but things like subs, you don't know what subs are going to be. So you got to estimate a little high and hopefully come down. And other things like supplies and stuff, that's why I spend a lot of time reviewing supply or bills that we pay to make sure that we're doing things as economically responsible as we can. So, but the education fund, you'll see in that second column, near the bottom, the third line from the bottom, I'm estimating at this point that we'll see about a 1.9% deficit in the education fund, 1.2 million deficit in O&M, and a 42,000 deficit in transportation. Transportation is one fund where I think, revenue is probably a little done right here, because state grants, claims were just due yesterday. So for all the school districts in the state, so the state has not released what they're gonna get for state grants yet. So that, but hopefully by September, I'll have a better number in there for transportation. But O&M, a lot of that is because, things like, utilities are way up from just a couple years ago. Hopefully the solar panel, thing will help that, but I'm not anticipating helping that this year. Hopefully that will be in future years. Maybe it will help this year, I'm not sure. So there's we go. And then the other half of the budget, I consider the non-operating, or is the non-operating funds. And things like debt service, it's fine that it's showing $104,000 revenue over expenses, but that money cannot be used for anything but debt service. So it's just a timing thing. If there's a deficit or a positive, it's just a timing thing. It's just because, like this year, I'm estimating we'll have a little bit more property taxes than we're gonna have payments, but it will work it out. It'll be zero in the end, kind of thing. So one year or another, it doesn't matter. IMRF, we've been running a surplus in, or a deficit in, kind of purposely. We reduced our levy a couple of years ago, to try to keep our levy as low as possible. And because of that, we're showing a deficit of $500,000 in that fund. But that's intentional because we have a $4 million fund balance, almost $4.5 million fund balance at this point. Capital projects, we get money in from the county school facility sales tax, and a lot of the big projects we end up doing, roofs, repairs, and things like that, we do out of that. And tort and life safety, again, those are funds that we have a little bit of a balance, and we spend out of it, spend out the levy every year as much as possible. So we move as many things into those funds as we can, but there's very stiff statutory limits on how you do that. So overall, I do see an expected deficit of about $3 million at this point, with the hope that with controlling expenses and stuff over the year, we'll be able to lessen that in the end. So that's where I stand there. The budget will be posted on the district website tomorrow, and there will be a paper copy at the district office. I'm not sure I've ever had anybody come look at the paper copy, but I always put it at the front desk of the school districts for that reason. And then we'll have a public hearing on September 20th, and we'll ask for board approval on September 20th.
Do we have any questions for Mr. McKenzie?
And I know I've been communicating with you back and forth today. I must say, I haven't had a chance to read everything. But I do have, can you go back to the slide with the corporate replacement? And tell me again, because I thought I heard you say that we received revenues of $3 million last year. It was down to 2.3, but I think I saw 1.8. Did I did I?
Well, we also have part of the revenue in IMRF. So there's like 100,000 of that goes in. But I can see my spreadsheet is wrong, this summary page. But
it is
about 100,000 also gets put in the IMRF. So it was about $1.9 million, or I'm expecting about $1.95 million this year. It was close to $3 million last year.
Okay. Do we anticipate that to continue to go down at that rate, or will it?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
I don't think people are anticipating to go down. I mean, it may go down somewhat, it's going to fluctuate. It fluctuates every year, but I don't expect it to go down, I mean, at $1.9 million, we're more back to our more historic numbers. We may be a little over our historic numbers, but not by much. So.
I just wanted to clarify that because
Yeah.
with what you said. As I look at this, and I'm just going to look at just the operating one alone, because that's pretty much the one that we focus on a lot. So this will be the third year that we're going to have a deficit. And it looks like it's going to be 2,679. And I know I asked this question, but I just did a quick forecast based on, it looks like we had 1.8% increase in revenue, 4% in expenditures. If I would take that out, let's just say 5 years, that's $25 million deficit. 6 would be closer to 35, I think a little bit So I just want to know what your thoughts are. I know you said, you know, the minimum wage, since we're there, that might not hit us so hard. Where do you think we're going to be? Because we should have several, not today, but we obviously yesterday, started on that Wilder Weight plan, right, in that school. We know we needed a new school. Based on the information you provided, Scott, during the superintendent's report, there's several classes that are full, right, in several of the elementary schools. So I'm concerned, you know, a new elementary school, I think, would be a minimum of $40 million. So I just want to make sure where we think we're going to be, because if we're in a $3 million deficit each year, it doesn't take long to go through those funds, those reserves.
Well, and $40 million is, and all these things, I agree with you. I mean, it's not sustainable long term. These increases are not sustainable long term. I mean, I think right now, the estimate of salary increases right in just salary is, I thought, closer to like 5.5% just for the salary. Benefits are in that same range. And it's not sustainable long term, but it's not expected to be sustainable long term. I don't expect salaries to continue to increase. The thing about Wilder Way, you know, building a new school is going to have to be a discussion about debt and debt service and our tax rate. I mean, the reason we're talking about building a new Wilder Way right now is, one, it's very needed, but two, the way our bonds are structured over the next 5 to 7 years, all of our bonds are going to be paid off. And so, which is great, but it also gives us opportunity to solve the problem of the school and issue $45 million of bonds without affecting property tax rate. And our property tax rate, as I've said before, is already the lowest in the Tri-County area. So I want it to be as low as possible, just like everybody else. You know, I pay property taxes too. I guess I don't live in Dunlap right now, I'm sorry to say, but I live in Peoria Heights, but I want to control them as much as everybody else, just like I want them to be controlled, because that's kind of, you know, for one, it's what my job, and two, I want them to be as low as possible. But they are the lowest in the Tri-County area, so we have a good story to tell already, but we need a new school at some point, whether it's in the next 2 years or the next 10 years. At some point, the district's going to have to do a new school. Now, hopefully, the new school would be a modern school, more energy efficient, more efficient in a lot of ways. But yeah, eventually, the district's going to have to make difficult decisions if things don't moderate over the next couple of years. And we're not talking 5 years, we're talking over the next couple of years. But yeah, that's definitely true. So, and the problem is, you know, we're in a service kind of thing, and so 80% of our operating budget is in, I mean, $39 million of $48 million of our operating budget is in salary and benefits. And so, and the kids are here whether we have employees or not, but, you know, we have to have employees here because the kids are going to go. So, and, you know, we want them to be, you know, the employees to be here, so. But yeah, those are all true, and we're going to have difficult decisions going forward if EAB doesn't keep up with. I mean, historically, EAB was always keeping up with these increases, and the last few years, the last 3 or 4 years, I don't have that up in front of me. EAB first went down for 2 or 3 years, and the last 2 years it started to creep up again. So hopefully that creeping up will moderate these problems. But yeah, we're going to have to really control costs, and Scott and Matt and I are going to have to really scrutinize everything we do to make sure that we control these as much as possible. That's why every bill that goes through, I approve the PO, and every invoice is paid, I look at the invoice before it's paid, and things like that. Even though we're a big district, I think it's worth my time to do those controls. So.
Those small items do add up, but of course, I mean, the biggest item is the salaries and the salary increases, and they've been very healthy and generous, and so.
And you know, we've had to increase payrolls substantially in the last 2 years, and A lot of it has to do with minimum wage going up. You've had to keep up with that. We've also had to, the competitive environment of employees. We've had to pay up a little bit for employees just to keep them from leaving. I mean, or entice them to come. In the old days, not 2 or 3 years ago, we were paying beginning aides like $12 an hour, $11 an hour. I mean, I've always been amazed that school districts have been able to fill those positions. To be blunt, I mean, we've got it. It's good that so many people are dedicated and they want to work those hours and they want to work with kids, and that's great. And but you can't pay people like that anymore. I mean, it's the law for one, but two, it's just you want to attract good employees by paying those people. So we've had to up our payroll and I mean, we gave substantial raises to a lot of groups this year. And I mean, we won't be able to next year moving forward. We'll still have to give raises, but it's not going to be like it was this year.
Thank you. Any further comments? Did you say you had something too?
Yeah, real simple, I think. And we talked earlier today too, Mike, so I appreciate your time. Can you just clarify for me, maybe you said it and I missed it, but I mean, you said we're tier 2.
We're a tier, under the evidence-based funding plan, which I still think of as general state aid, the amount of money that they give us as, part of their funding. We are getting 4.3 million this next year. And
but you said we were tier 1, but we moved to a tier 2.
No, we were tier 2 and we've moved to tier 1, which means we're the worst funded school district based on their metrics in this, in the state at this point.
Okay.
Which is kind of crazy when you think about places like Canton has moved to like a tier 4 school. Well, Canton has moved to a tier 4 school because they used to have International Harvester. And so the last 2 years, they've received $12 million in CPPRT. Well, that's more than their operating fund budget. So, they went from, struggling financially to suddenly they're really strong. Well, that's all going to go away with these decreases. But yeah, so this year we're considered a tier 1 school. I expect us to go back to tier 2, but because of the way the tier structure happened and all the changes statewide with some of these schools getting a lot of extra money, instead of 350,000, we're going to get like 500. What did I say? 530,000 more. So it's not a huge difference, but it's just kind of one of those weird things that might come up if it starts becoming kind of public knowledge. But it's like Peoria got $40 million last year in CPPRT. Our entire education fund expenses we're only expecting to be 40 million this year, or 39, just under 40 million. And so it's because they had all this industry and we did not. And so now there's talk about redoing those formulas and states talking about redoing those formulas because it's become kind of a little unfair the way it's distributed. We have 4,700 students, they have 12,000 in some, and they're getting 10 times more than us, 12 times more than us. It doesn't make any sense. But at this point, that's how it's always been done. I mean, for the last 50 years.
And that's taken from a snapshot of the 70s?
In the 70s, 74, 73,
The
Scott was saying 79,
The
but
law was established, I believe, in 79.
yeah, so, but at some point in the 70s, they took how much personal property tax was coming from your district, and it's also cities and other municipalities, not just school districts. It's all municipalities, counties, libraries. Everybody gets personal property replacement tax. But it was based on how much you were getting of that personal property replacement tax that was coming from your district in the 70s.
But to summarize Mike's, and kind of bring this to
Yeah.
conclusion, and
I have one
to
more
address
question.
your question, the corporate property replacement tax it's money, but as far as the overall budget, it's small.
Yes.
The driving force is our EAV, and it needs to continue to grow and grow rapidly because our expenses are growing rapidly, and right now they're outpacing our income, our growth on the EAV side. If that doesn't change, it is not sustainable, and we're gonna have a problem. It's not imminent, but looking down the road, if things don't change or improve, which they have, but they need to continue and improve, we're gonna have much more serious conversations coming.
Well, and maybe you spoke to it, Mike, but this is my final question or point. Dr. Dearman was just talking about it. And I might have just missed it, but you said that the EAV was down a couple years, but then it was creeping up a little bit. But then last year it was 4.25 or something.
Right.
But you built in 3.
3.
And you're doing that just to be conservative.
Yes.
Okay. But there's no
Yeah, the
you don't
county
have a
has-
crystal ball here. You're just saying,
Right.
I'm gonna just hang it on 3 and just see what happens. I can't lose at 3, right? So.
Well, I mean, I'm hoping so. I mean, I think it's conservative to say 3%. I would expect it to be similar to what it was last year.
When do we usually call down to find out? Usually the gentleman that.
Dave Ryan at the county is usually who gives me an estimate on that, but we're still in the,
About the levy time, about the time of the levy, he
by
gets.
the levy time, he'll have a pretty good number.
Yeah.
In October, he'll have a pretty good number, but here in August, people are just now getting, just got their estimates, or their new EAVs in the mail, and people have time to contest it, and so there's all these moving parts that are going on. So hopefully we'll know more in October. And I've asked him for that information, told me to give it to me as soon as he got it, so.
So we can update the budget if necessary, if we give
Yeah, I
them.
mean, it'll change a little bit as we go through this next 30 days, as I find out
Yes.
more information.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Abby, I just
I'm
have
sorry,
one.
sure, yeah.
Other question, if I could? Sure. As I talk through this, and, just like Dr. Dearman said, if we continue to be imminent, at what point, I know we've talked about lot levy for a long time, is there a point where we're gonna have a committee started?
Yes.
Start that?
We will be getting to that very soon.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
I apologize for being too wordy too, because it's
Oh,
like,
you're fine.
I love this stuff, and so I get all excited sometimes when people ask me questions. So
Thank you very much, Mr. McKenzie.
Scott starts pulling me off the table, off the stage.
Okay, thank you. Information regarding the 2023-24 snow removal contract's been included in the board packet. Is there any discussion? Information regarding board policy updates from press update 112 has been included in the board packet. Is there any discussion? This concludes the information discussion item segment of the meeting. The board will now move on to the consent agenda. Are there any clarifications or discussion regarding items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Feldman. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Roll call vote.
Olshauser. Aye. Humble.
Aye.
Smith. Aye. Tyler.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Feldman.
Aye.
Motion carried. The board will now move on to action items. The bill list, treasurer's report, district investment reports, bank statements are all included in the board packet. Is there any discussions?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a point very briefly. We are talking about issues going forward and concerns that we may have for future budgets. I don't know how many people really take a look at these statements that we get from Fortress Bank, what they're part of the funding. And when I look at the bottom line on the interest monies that we're receiving these days, based on what we used to receive, I'm so proud that we had the foresight to make a switch, because Fortress Bank has just voluntarily been ratcheting up our interest. And on the monies that we have, that is one place that we can generate revenues for the school district. And we have been doing it. And when we look at the bottom line, that's helped tremendously in this coming year's budget. So
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for your efforts on that initiative.
there were a lot of people that not just me.
And it started several board members ago as well, that the conversation happened, but you made it happen, and we appreciate
Now,
it.
Dr. Dearman had a big part of that too. So.
Thank you. May I please have a motion for approval to pay the bills?
I move to approve the payment of the bills in the amount of $4,257,864.03 as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Okay, was that Mrs. Smith? It was. Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Humbles,
Aye.
Smith. Aye. Tyra.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Feldman.
Aye.
Olshauser.
Aye.
Motion carried. Information regarding the out-of-state conference request is included in the board packet. Is there any discussion? May I please have a motion to approve the request?
So moved.
Mr. Wisdom, is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Tyra. Roll call vote, please.
Smith. Aye. Tyra.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Feldman.
Aye.
Olshauser.
Aye.
Humbles.
Aye. Motion carried. Information regarding copier service management renewal is included in the board packet. Is there any discussion? May I please have a motion to approve the agreement?
I move to approve the agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Tyra. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. Roll call vote.
Tyra.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Feldman.
Aye.
Olshauser.
Aye.
Humbles.
Aye.
Smith. Aye.
Motion carried. Information regarding the 2023-24 board meeting schedules included in the board packet. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment here, just so everybody, I'm sure everyone looked at this. But the dates are now Thursdays with the exception of one, which is on a Wednesday. So I just want to make note of that because that next meeting in September, I believe, is a Thursday. So just to make a note, so everyone understands that.
Okay, thank you.
And changing that does not affect Mr. McKenzie's timeline with the budget. It'll still be on display for an adequate amount of time because it's a day later.
All right, so board meetings will be on Thursday with the exception of, I believe, November because of the board convention.
Yes.
Okay. May I please have a motion to approve the board meeting schedule?
I move to approve the 2023-24 board meeting schedule as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Holzhauser. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Roll call vote, please.
Tyra.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Feldman.
Aye.
Olshauser.
Aye.
Humbles.
Aye.
Smith. Aye.
Motion carried. May I please have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
I move to adjourn to closed session for the following purposes as stated in the Open Meetings Act: the appointment, employment, compensation, and performance of specific employees, student disciplinary cases, collective negotiating matters, litigation, security procedures, discussions of minutes of meetings lawfully closed, and purchase of real property.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Time is 6:49. Can we let these people go home, or are they all?
I don't need anyone.
Is anyone needed for closed session? Any administrators? They probably would like to go home since they've had a long day.
Any board members?
Welcome back.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
thanks for bringing that back.
in an email.
Forgot about that.
Would you like to do that? Okay.
I could just say something.
Yeah, sure. Guys, Dr. Dearman wanted to make announcements. He is,
I'm president of the CID region for ISA. I don't normally go to national conferences. I've gone one time and I got it paid for. But this year I am gonna go to the national conference and keep your time with some of the things we're talking about doing. But to offset the cost, I'm not going to do it up in Chicago. Brandon and I went to that last year.
it's okay. You're entitled to go to a conference. Okay, may I have a motion, please, to return to open session?
I'll move that.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Tyra. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. And we are back in open session at 7:05 PM. Okay, let's see where we're going. May I please have a motion to approve the human resource consent agenda? And we did get the custodian salaries corrected.
Yes.
Okay. May I have a motion?
I move.
Thank you, Mr. Tyra. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Feldman.
Aye.
Olshauser. Aye. Humble.
Aye.
Smith. Aye. Tyra.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Motion carried. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Holzhauser. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. 7:07 PM.
So the position goes where the two board agrees. And so when you brought her into the position goes to 43.
Thank you.
The old salary, not the new one, had been in her.
I think that's your pen.
That's what happened. It happened with 6 other positions at the time. It would have never gone through when we went to actually get the permanent assistant. Because we got a mismatch that our entry does not match what the system is going to get. So the numbers in one shape. But on the far part, that's what happened. It was